The Beatles Get Back was directed by Peter Jackson, and it stars John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, and George Harrison as themselves. You may not know this, but I love the Beatles. If I had to choose a favorite band of all time, it would probably be the Beatles. At the peak of their career, they just released masterpiece after masterpiece after masterpiece. And that's not even all the masterpieces in their career. If it weren't for the Fab Four, the music industry, hell, pop culture, would not look the same way it does today. Before I get into my review, I want to provide a little disclaimer. I don't really feel comfortable calling this a spoiler warning, because this documentary covers real-life events that have been well known to most people for over 50 years. Though if you want to go into this completely blind, I would skip to this annotation, so you can receive my final thoughts and my final grade on this film. Before I get into my review, let me provide some background for you. In the year 1969, the Beatles had just completed the White Album, and they wanted to perform live for the first time in over 3 years, and to finish their next album, their successor to the White Album, which was a big critical and financial success. During this time, a documentary was filmed called Let It Be, which was released in 1971. Over 50 hours of footage was shot, though the final product ended up being only an hour and 21 minutes. And this documentary was later criticized for being just a Beatles breakup film and embellishing all the various infighting and drama between the group. I haven't seen this documentary, and there's a pretty good reason for that. This documentary hasn't been released to physical media since 1981, and it was released on a very crappy VHS and Betamax transfer. This era of the Beatles has kind of been shrouded in mystery and legend. History kind of painted this era as being very hostile for the group. They were constantly fighting amongst themselves, and Yoko Ono caused the Beatles to break up. I mean, this is a very, very, very popular belief. But this documentary kind of busts those myths. It doesn't deny that there was infighting, but also at the same time, it shows that these people were like family to each other. Yes, they argued and bickered a lot, but also at the same time, they weren't completely miserable together. They were still very professional and very friendly to each other. They were kind of like brothers in that way. Though I feel like that it's impossible to paint a 100% accurate picture of what went down during these sessions. It's impossible to know what happened when the cameras were off, or what footage got chopped off the chopping room block, because there was over 50 hours of footage, and this documentary is 8 hours long. 8 hours is still a very, very long time, but that barely even scratches the surface to what went down during these recordings. Though it's probably a very much more accurate telling of what went down during these recordings versus the Let It Be documentary, because that is only an hour and 21 minutes. And this documentary is 8 hours long. So, just based on the runtime, I would guess that this is the more accurate telling of these events. I mean, I wasn't there, and I bet 100% of my viewers weren't there either. So you can't be 100% sure of what actually happened. This series is over 8 hours long, and unfortunately I don't have time to watch that all in one sitting, as much as I would like to. So it took me quite a while to finish this one, and for many people, this 8 hour long runtime will be a pretty daunting task, like it kind of was for me. Though, if you have the time to sit through all 8 hours of it, I would highly recommend doing that. All the footage has been remastered to glorious 4K footage, and it looks amazing. Being able to see the Fab Four doing what they do best, make music, is just such a treat. And we get to see the birth of some of the most iconic songs ever, like Octopus's Garden, Let It Be, Get Back, and many, many others. There's quite a bit of footage in here that has been talked about for many, many years, but hasn't really been seen to the general public until now. Like, we've heard the legends of George Harrison briefly leaving the band and almost causing them to break up. We finally get to see it here. We finally get to see how it plays out and how the band manages to pick the pieces back up and get the wheel moving again. And it's actually kind of inspiring and maybe a little uplifting to see how they can go from like the lowest of lows and still dig themselves back from it, still get back up right from it, even though the band will later break up a few months later. This documentary leads up to the legendary Rooftop concert. When watching this documentary for hours on end, when they finally get up on the rooftop, it feels so earned. They don't only show the Rooftop concert in its entirety. I mean, that's kind of the bare minimum, if you ask me. They show the reactions from the onlookers, from the people below. And seeing all their reactions is so interesting. It's such an interesting perspective that I never thought I wanted, but now that I have this, now that I have all the various reactions from the onlookers, I cherish every single second of footage that has been released. Also, a little nugget of information that I had absolutely no idea about was there were a lot of people that complained about the noise and even contacted the authorities. And a police officer actually went down to Abbey Road Studios and threatened to arrest the Beatles if they didn't turn the music down. The fact that I now know this is just so incredible. There are so many little moments in this documentary that makes this experience feel so complete. For example, Paul McCartney's young daughter, Heather, her reaction to Yoko's music is priceless. And John Lennon's oddball sense of humor. Let me tell you, John Lennon was a funny guy. Seeing John Lennon here brought very bittersweet feelings. Being able to see him do what he does best, which was make and perform music with a little help from his friends, is always an incredible sight. I cherish every second seeing that man perform. Though I just couldn't help but think about how just 11 short years later, he would be gunned down and his life would have been cut short by a crazed fan. I often think about how if John Lennon were never murdered, he might be alive today. And maybe we would have gotten that Beatles reunion. Also, while I was watching this documentary, the anniversary of George Harrison's death came up. And seeing George Harrison and thinking about his death also brought very bittersweet feelings, very similar feelings to seeing John Lennon. Also, this documentary probably rules out the idea that Yoko broke up the Beatles. I mean, it's been proven that she wasn't the thing that broke up the Beatles. It was the Beatles that broke up the Beatles. But going back to the task at hand, from what we saw in the documentary, Yoko, yes, she was always by John's side, but you never once see her bossing the band around, telling them what to do. She just kind of sat and kept to herself and read the paper. Even though I've been singing this documentary's praises, I have trouble recommending this to non-Beatles fans. I mean, this is over 8 hours long, and watching the whole thing is quite a task, especially if you have other things going on in your life. Also, I kind of wish that we would have been able to experience this in theaters. I know that would have been virtually impossible with its episodic 8-hour runtime, though maybe they would have released like a shorter version, maybe a more abridged version of this documentary that just kind of hits the key themes to drop in theaters. But, I mean, that's wishful thinking. And I'm happy that we got this 8-hour long cut, because we got the most the most in-depth version of this footage that we could have gotten, and I'm grateful that this exists. Being able to see the Beatles do what they do best, and that is create music. Being able to see that is like watching Da Vinci paint the Mona Lisa. Being able to witness this is such a privilege and such a treat. Overall, the Beatles Get Back gets an A. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed my review of the Beatles Get Back. And if you did, make sure to give this video a like. And if you want more content like this, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell notification so you can be notified every time I upload a new video. And just shout out to Woodstock and orange flavored Tic Tacs. Thanks for watching.